Okay, so let's see. Let's have a beautiful story. Okay, so yesterday we started the parak of Lulav HaGazel, and we learned the Mishnah, and the Gemara challenged, why is it, since there is no mitzvahs lachem other than the first day, why is it that on the second day, Lulav HaGazel is possible? The only problem is lachem, and you don't need to have the requirement of lachem on the days after the first day. So that was a Gemara's question. And we had the answer as well, but we'll start from the last line at the bottom of Chav Tesam Beis. The reason why there's a problem all week long using a stolen lulav is mishum to have a mitzvah, mishum to have a mitzvah babaver. It's a mitzvah babaver. It's a mitzvah that you only are able to do through the avera. Toshis asks from different places where we don't use mitzvah babaver. For instance, the Asherah that our Mishnah says is puzzle. How did Asherah come to be? Because people serve it like an avodah zarah. So why isn't that a mitzvah babaver? So Tosfos says a svara which has to be refined a little bit, and I'm going to just point to the lines of Tosfos, about 15 lines in Tosfos down from the top. So it's about 2 inches down from the top of Amid. Tosfos says the yesh loimer ledomi legezel the machmas averes hagezel ba mitzvah sheyotzevay. If you steal a lulav to be able to use it, you're only able to be yoytze the mitzvah through the fact that you did avera, because how else did you have a lulav and esrog? You acquired it through gzela. Avalhani, but the Asherah, for instance, otu machmas avera shenasas boy mean afik bay. The avera that was done with it was done with it, but that's a side issue. That has nothing to do with how you accomplished the mitzvah. Mitzvah of avera is only if the mitzvah is what allowed you to be able to accomplish the mitzvah. Shenemar, because it says in the pasuk, "V'aveisim gazol as a b'seach v'sachoila." You're going to bring to me bad karbonis, such as stolen, such as a limping animal, a crippled animal, and a sick animal. And we darshan gazol dumya de pisech. The psul of gazol is going to be just like the psul of pisech. Ma pisech less like the kanda. Just like a pisech, it's a permanent blemish in an animal, and it could never be healed. And therefore, a pisech will always be possible for a carbon. There's nothing you can do to change it. Av gozel less like the kanta. So too, a stolen animal, once it's stolen, it will not work. And in our case, we're applying it to the mitzvah of lulav as well. It doesn't matter if it's before yesh bailam, if it's after yesh bailam, it doesn't make a difference. I understand why, if someone stole an animal and it was before years, it's not his. The pasuk says, "Adam ki yakiv mikem amrechmona v'lavdideu." The Torah said it has to be your own, but if you stole it and the bailam were not yet niyayish yet, then it's not yours. And the la'acha yush hakanya b'yush. But if it's after yush already, you were kanyat b'yush, and Tosha speaks out, we asking that yesh shalom is not kanya. So it's Tosha says to yesh and shini rishus, because when you're being makdash, that creates the shini rishus. So why is it that you cannot be makriv as a carbon an animal that's stolen after years? Even though the kinyan does go through, and it technically should be able to become hakdashes, but since it's a mitzvah b'avera, therefore it's going to be possible for a carbon. So the transferring in to hakdash's domain when you're trying to be makdash animal is a mitzvah b'avera. It only comes through the gzela, and therefore it's possible for a carbon. It says in the pasuk, "Kani Hashem, oyev mishpat." I like mishpat. I like justice. Soine gezel ba'oila, and I hate stolen oilers. I hate stolen oilers. So, mashal lemelech bosavidam. This is a mashal to a king in Ireland. So you over al beis hamechas. He was passing by a toll booth, a place where you pay tax to the government. Amr la'avodav. So he told his entourage, "Chenu mechas lemuchser. Make sure you have a speed pass or an easy pass. Make sure you pay the toll." Amr lo, they told him, "King, all the tax goes right back to you. Why do you have to pay your own tax? Why do you have to pay your own tax? We're Democrats. We don't have to follow our own rules. Amr lahem fakert. He said, "Mimenu yilmadu bal over derachim." Let people learn from me that even the king pays taxes. And they won't try to get out of taxes. I make a mask mandate, but you'll never catch me without wearing a mask. So to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Amar, he said, Ani Hashem soine gezel ba'ila. Mimenu yilmadu banai v'yavrichu atzmon min hagezel. Let them learn from me. I don't want, even if you bring it to me for a carbon, I don't want it. And therefore they should realize that they shouldn't engage in stolen property. And Rashi speaks out over here. Soinoi gezel ba'ila. Ba'ila she'atem aviin li, even if you're bringing it to me, ani soinoi as a gezel she'atem goizlo moisam. I don't like that you steal it. And so to Rashi, really, I shouldn't focus on it at all. It's not relevant to me because it all belongs to me. Nevertheless, I want to teach Klal Yisrael that gezel is not geschmack to me. It's disgusting to me. So there's those who ask a shaila. We had the Gemara answer with the lumdus that there's a problem of mitzvah b'aver. Why was this extra story necessary? Why was this extra story necessary? So there are those who learn that if we're talking about a carbon, you might have if we're talking about a carbon that the Bailam has hana from, the Bailam is going to eat that they have a carbon shlomim. So there maybe is when it's also to bring out mitzvah b'aver. But maybe in the case where someone's bringing a carbon oila, where he's not having any benefit from it at all, it all goes with the voya. Maybe there you would have the svara that anyway belongs to the Rebbeinu Shalom wherever it is. The Rebbeinu Shalom minds. The Gemara wants to stress, even if you're not getting anything at all out of the carbon, it's all going to the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom rejects something that comes through Gzela.
Isn't it funny? The first Mishnah said, Sukka l'malam asrim ama psula. And the Gemara there says, the reason it says puzzle is because it's midaraisa. Here it says, the Gemara answers ain't the kanta. It's just funny, it just kind of struck me as funny that it doesn't say puzzle by this korban. It says ain't the kanta.
Where are you looking? Oh, less like the kanta?
Yeah.
That means there's nothing, you can't fix it.
Can't fix it. It doesn't call it what
so it's possible with the Raisa, and there's no way to rectify it.
Right. Like the first Mishnah in Sukkah, where it says that it doesn't say let's like the kanta by the Sukkah, it says psula. And then we had a whole thing about why it says puzzle by Sukkah and not by Mavoi.
You don't mean the first Mishnah in Sukkah itself.
First Mishnah in the Masechta.
Well, the first Mishnah you have it to kanta.
To lower it.
Yeah.
Right, but we say that by Mavoi, right? So that's the machlokas between Sukkah. Why does it say puzzle by Sukkah and gives you a tikkun by the Mavoi? Because the Sukkah is deraisa and the Mavoi here this is deraisa, and it doesn't say. It says ain't the kanta. What?
Our Mishnah says puzzle.
Our Mishnah says puzzle.
The psak of a Mishnah says puzzle because it is deraisa. In the Gemara's discussion, I'm
referring to the Gemara's discussion of it. Okay.
The Gemara's discussion is trying to say that there's no remedy.
I wasn't talking about the sorry. I was not talking about the Mishnah here. I was talking about the language of the Gemara that says Entikata. But your point is taken. The Mishnah says so.
So there's another interesting part that I heard over, and that is the very first Indian that the Torah discusses is Bereshit Bora Lakim, and Rashi right at the beginning goes through a whole shakla b'tarya in justifying why Eretz Yisrael belongs to Klal Yisrael. Because it's the Rebbeinu Shalom's, and I decided who owns it. So it's interesting, even before the Torah discusses any of the mitzvahs, the very first thing that the Torah discusses is that Klal Yisrael owns Eretz Yisrael. So there are those who want to learn that the reason why it was so important to put that even before any of the mitzvahs in the Torah is because the Goyim contained us, any mitzvah that you do is not even a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah b'aver because it's all based on you stealing the land. So first, the Torah had to establish that Eretz Yisrael belongs to us. Then the mitzvahs that we do in Eretz Yisrael will not be a mitzvah b'avadir. So it's more
Wow.
itmoinami. So it's not just about us owning the land. It would undermine the mitzvahs if we seized the land, did the mitzvahs in the land, and it didn't belong to us. Itmoinami. Even though this morning Lebanon started firing rockets in Eretz Yisrael, I think Eretz Yisrael is right now under fire. Northern Israel is under fire from rockets. Itmoinami, Amr Abami, Yavesh Pasal. If you have a lulav that's dried out, it's going to be pasal. Why will it be pasal? Because it's not hadar. Zok to Gemara, Gazel pasal. Why is Gazel pasal? Mitzvah ba'avera. Because it's a mitzvah ba'avera, so this supports the Gemara's explanation that the reason why Gazel is pasal, the rest of Yom Tov, is because of mitzvah ba'avera. Ufliga de Rabbi Yitzchak, and there are Rabbi Yitzchak. The Amr Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani Amr Shmuel. Yitzchak bar Nachmani said in the Shmuel, Lo yishanu ela b'yom tov rishon. He said that it's also that it's also to use. That's it's possible to use. A little bit gazel is only the first day of Yom Tov. Abel b'yom tov sheni, but on the following days of Yom Tov, yitoich sheyoytze b'shol. Since you don't need lachem anymore, it doesn't say lachem on the second day. Therefore, yoytze nami b'gazel. You're also yoytze b'gazel. So clearly, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani doesn't hold it a problem of mitzvah b'avera. So the only other potential problem is the chiyuv of lochem, which only applies on the first day. Correct Gemara. Moser Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak. Lulav hagazel v'yavesh pasel. A lulav that's either stolen or dried out is going to be pasel. Correct Gemara. Hashal kosher. It must be. Our Mishnah glaringly omits shol. So it must be that shol, a lulav hashol, is going to be kosher. Amos. What day of Sukkot is the Mishnah referring to? Ilema b'yom tov rishon. If the Mishnah is only discussing the first day of Sukkot, well, haksiv lachem mishalachem. So shol, of course, would be possible to be used on the first day of Yom Tov. V'alav dideyu. And alav b'yom tov sheni. The Mishnah that says that a lulav hagazel is possible, and by diuk holds that a lulav hashol is kosher, must be referring to the second day of Yom Tov and on. Vikatani gazel possible. And it still says that a stolen lulav is possible. So this would contradict what Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani said. So we have a diuk from our Mishnah to prove that shol, that gazel is possible all week long, even after the first day, which is a kash on Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani. The Gemara Amarava no la olam b'yom tov rishon. Let's say the Mishnah is speaking b'yom tov rishon, and b'yom tov rishon is when gazel is aser. We have a diuk that shol is mutter, shol is kosher to be used for a lulav on the first day, and we know it's not true because you need lachem. Zok the Gemara, don't make such a diuk from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said gazel, but avad shol is also possible. Well, let me boy come. We're saying the bigger chiddush. Let me boy shol. It's obvious that a borrowed lulav would be possible on the first day. The lavdi day, it doesn't belong to him. So of course you can't be yaitzer. The chiddush is that even gazel you can't be yaitzer. Aval gazel amos tam gzela yish bailam. You might think that by every gzela there's automatically a yish bailam. Why is there automatically a yish bailam? Because the bailam knows I'm taking it away from him. Gzela isn't hidden. The person knows. He's stealing it in front of his face. So you might think the balter is already yish. That would make it a chetidei dummy. That would make it like it belongs to the Goslin, and therefore there's a greater svara to argue that it should be good to be used, it should be kosher to be used. Kamash malon that you don't say that. So let's see actually kamash malon. The adishma'in and the ayish loy kanile. Even if the victim of the gzela witnesses the gzela, so you would think that he's miyayish right away. Kamash malon is not miyayish right away until you hear him say vaili the chazarkis. The Meimar Amar, why will he not give up, even though he's powerless to stop this theft from happening? Because he might be saying to himself, Hashahu the talk of Ninoi, Today he grabbed it away from me. Yes, he did, indeed. But Lamachar Tefes Bedina. Tomorrow I'll summon him to the Bezdin and I'll get it back. So therefore, just because he's not resisting and he's letting you walk away with his lulav, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's given up on the ability to get it back. So since by Gzela, there could be an argument to say that it belongs to the Gazlan. The Gazlan has more koyach over it than the Shoal, which for sure doesn't belong to the Shoal. You might have thought that that could be used for your lulav and esrog, Kamash Malon, that it cannot. But of course, when the Mishnah says Gazel, it of course includes Shoal as well as not being able to be used as a lulav. And therefore we could learn that the Mishnah is only referring to the first day of Yom Tov, and the second day in Yom Tov and on, both Shoal and Gazel might be allowed, and that is the Shita of Rav Yitzchak ben Nachman. Amar lu Rav Huna lahan Vanki. There were these brokers who would buy, a rovis from the farm, and then they would sell them. A typical Arava dealer. So he said, he's a Vinsu Asa. I'm sorry, it's not a rovis, it's Hadassim. He's a Vnisu Asa Meakum. If you're going to buy Hadassim from Goyisha producers, Loy Segazazu Atum. You shouldn't go, you don't do it like apple picking, where you pay and then you pick the apple. You make them provide that service for you. Only buy the Hadassim from these farmers if they cut them down for you and they give them to you. Make sure that the people who you're buying from, they're the ones who actually cut down the Hadassim from the field. Let them give them to you, Polish. My timer. Why is the reason for this? Are known to steal land, and Rashi adds in the last line, and maybe this particular land upon which these Hadassim are growing that you're purchasing, maybe it belonged to a Yid and the Goyim stole it from him. And therefore, the Karka ain't an zealous. Karka doesn't get stolen, which means it always remains in the rishus of the original Bailam. And Rashi says, even if the Bailam were Yayish, they couldn't resist this Ganef, this Gazlan who stole their land. It doesn't make a difference because Yish doesn't help. Yish has no impact on Karka. It always remains in the rishus of the original owner. We learn from Sukkim that land always remains in the rishus of its owner, even if he's given up and never getting it back. So therefore, what's going to happen is, if you cut down this produce, you're actually stealing from the original owner. But once the hadas was cut down, have a gezel. Now it's gezel, who goes like, and the person who's cutting it, he's going to be the one that's stealing it. And if you steal it, you're going to have a problem of mitzvah b'avera. However, if you let the goy cut it, let the goy cut the hadassim down from the field, so that the yish bailam will happen while it's in the possession of the goy, and then when the goy gives it to you, that creates a shinu harishus. The shinu harishus b'yadaychu, and you'll be coined fair and square, and there won't be a problem of mitzvah b'avera. Let's see Rashi, the third line in Rashi. Let them cut it down, and they'll give it to you. Let them be the ganavim, and you'll purchase it from them. So you'll buy stolen goods. However, as soon as the Goslin pushed the person off his land and stole his land many moons ago, at that point, not only was the Bailam miyayish on the karka, but the Bailam were also miyayish on any of the payers that were on the karka now or that would grow on the karka in the future. And therefore, v'havayish etzlam, which means that the Bailam were miyayish already when the payers were still in the rishus of the Goslin, which is the goy. The and only after Yush does the status of this hadas move from the possession of the goy to the possession of you, the avankri, the broker. Because Savar Yush Greda Loikani. Clearly, our Gemara holds that Yush on its own is not Kaina. Aval Yush Vishinu Rishus Kani. It's only because there was a Yush in the hands of the Goslin, and then there's a Shinu Rishus when the Goslin sold it to the broker. Zok Rashi, and even if you hold Yush is Kaina, you still need to do this extra step. Vinami Kani, even if Yush alone is Kaina, if the Yid himself would cut it, even though there's Yush, it would be a mitzvah baba there. If you're the ones who cut it, tiwatem goizim. So Rashi teaches a very important rule. Mitzvah baba avera is only if you did the avera. If you bought it from somebody who did the avera, that wouldn't be a problem of mitzvah baba avera. Zok to Gemara, I don't understand.
The other Mandiomer, he would be able to cut it.
I'm sorry?
According to Mandiomer, says it doesn't hold a mitzvah of there, would be able to cut it then.
That's right. According to Rabbi Yitzchak, holds there's no problem with mitzvah baba avera. In fact, the Gemara, soif. Kigazu avankri. Why is it necessary for the goyim to cut it? You can still have the yid cut it. Kigazu avankri. There's still not a problem because they're not using these hadasim for themselves. They're going to be selling it to others. So they'll have a yush bailam be a dahu. Let there be a yush bailam in the hands of the avankari. The shina rishus biyadam, and the shina rishus will happen when they sell it to the actual user. And therefore, their customers won't have a problem of mitzvah baba avera because they didn't cut it. It was the yid who cut it. Zok Gemara, you're right. The reason why they were advised not to cut it, let the guy cut it, is because they're also going to take their own hadassim supply from their inventory. So even though if they sell the inventory, the person who they sell it to won't have a problem of mitzvah baba avera, but any inventory that they use themselves will have that problem, and that's why they should let the guy cut it. Zok Gemara v'leknu b'shinu ma'isa. Why won't they be cutting it with the shinu ma'isa? Why is there a shinu ma'isa? Zok Rashi, the shinu ma'isa here is v'leknu b'shinu ma'isa is the third line from the bottom. She'eged shloishes haminim yachad. You actually tied the lulav, the lulav, the dasam, the rubbers are all tied together. That's a shinu. The shinu ma'isa nami kani. We know a shinu ma'isa is kani as well. So why don't we have a shinu ma'isa to be kani? You could say that these are abundant held, that the lulav does not have to be tied together, and therefore it wouldn't be considered a shina. You didn't do anything because the binding it together to make it into the set of arba minim doesn't constitute a shina. And even if you hold that a lulav does need to be tied together, so by tying it together you made it into a chevetz or mitzvah. There's a shina there. That's not a good shina. It's a shinu ha'chayzer lebriyasehu. It's a shinu that can be very easily undone by untying them. The shinu ha'chayzer lebriyasehu loishma shinu, and a shinu that turns back to its original state is not considered a shinu to be kain. Why aren't you kain it with shinu Hashem? Because its name changes. In the ikar havalu asa, when it's just a loose hadas, it's referred to as an asa. The hashta, and when it's tied together, Hashana, it's called Hashana. And why is it called Hashana? Who calls it a hadas Hashana? So Rashi says the reason why it was called Hashana is al shem shiragilin la'aydan lo Hashana v'chad. Since they tie it together with Hashana, they refer to the whole bundle as Hashana. So to Gemara, that's not a kasha. People call a hadas a Hashana as well, even before it's bound together, because they know it's going to be bound together. So therefore, you don't have a Shinu Hashem here at all. And since you don't have a Shinu Hashem here at all, we couldn't use the fact that it's a Shinu Hashem. Tosfos has a very, very good kasha. Tosfos asks, I don't understand. If a Shinu Maisa, a Chayzer L'Briyasa, is Lo Shmei Shinui, so why would you think a Shinu Hashem is any different? This Shinu Hashem is also a Shinu Chayzer L'Briyasa. Because the whole Shinu is the fact that it became a bundle. So once the Gemara answered that a Shinu Chayzer L'Briyasa, a shinu that could be reversed, doesn't create a kinyan, why is it that the Gemara here says otherwise? Why did the Gemara ask here, Hashem, why should it be any better? So let's see the first line of Tosfos, Tema. I mean the shinu ma'isa chayzel b'rasai lo shmei shinu. So Ibazah, you should argue the same thing. Dua din b'shinu Hashem. Hidamin b'meruba. So Tosfos has different for us. Either he goes according to the Bandamar that you don't say that. We could say here, he says another interesting story here. Boy, just the places, the Shinu Hashem, the Leka Shinu Maisa Bahadei. If it's only a Shinu Hashem that does not have a Shinu Maisa, there you'll say like Kani b'Chayzel L'Briyasa Meirish. There I'll say that you're not Kani if it's a Chayzel L'Briyasa. But over here you have two. Aval Hachaz of places. The Agdai, it's not just a Shinu Hashem, it's a Shinu Hashem that came to be because you did a Maisa. So you made a Shinu Hashem and a Shinu Maisa together. Harichaz of Shinu Maisa Bahad Shinu Hashem, and there maybe it's Kani Afagab the Hadal Milsa, which gives a new shot to the Gemara's Kasha. When the Gemara asked for the Kninu B'Shinu Hashem, it didn't mean only with Shinu Hashem, but the Kninu with the combined fact that you have both a Shinu Maisa and a Shinu Hashem, that should work even though it's Chayshul L'Briyasai. And on that, the Gemara answers that it's not a Shinu Hashem at all, because they always called the Hadas, they always refer to it as a Yishana, and therefore it's not a Shinu Hashem. Tana Rabban, Sukkah Gzula. If you have a stolen sukkah, we're going to have to figure out soon what is a stolen sukkah. V'amesachach b'shus harabim, or somebody who built himself a sukkah in middle of the rishus harabim. And Rashi says, for all practical purposes, hanami gezel harabim. That's also stolen, because you have no right to build your sukkah on public property. So the lacha is, Rabbi Eliezer Paisel, Rabbi Eliezer, this is puzzle, the Chacham Machshir, and the Chacham, all this sukkah is going to be a kosher sukkah. Rab Nachman, Machaloikis b'shetoikiv es chaveiroi v'yotzei misukas. What is this sukkah gzula that we're talking about? It's talking about where you walked into your friend's sukkah, you picked him up and threw him out, and now you're moved into a sukkah. So let's see Rashi. Machaloikis. How the puzzle of Eliezer is going to talk about chaveiroi b'chazaka. You grabbed your friend, v'yotzei misukas benuya b'karkoi shel ligzol, and he had a sukkah built on his property. You just took him out and dragged him out. So Zok to Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer holds his apostle is following his shita. A person is not yaitze, a chiyuv with his friend sukkah, and that's why it's possible. Rashi says, not only the sukkah zula not good, but a sukkah shula as well. It has to be shalachem. Therefore, it's going to be possible. So we had on the Chavzayin and Beis a shita of Rabbi Eliezer who holds that not only do you need lechem by the arba minim, you also need lechem by the sukkah. Zok to Gemara. If you hold that karka is nixelis, because there is a machloikis, if karka could be nixelis. If you hold that karka could be nixelis, so that which means what does it mean nixelis? Rashi tells us defined as karka nixelis is claiming yesh ala karka teres gesel. If you learn that karka could be stolen, kishar metaltlin, and the key words are lamoid v'cheskas hagazlim, that Zela actually is a real status, it's a real thing, and we say now that this property is in the chazak of the Gazlim, it's still going to be possible because Sukkah Gzulahi. And Rashi explains, Lezer Dorish, Tasalach Mishalach, V'loi Gzula, V'loi Sheula. Chaka Sukkah is Tasalacha, and we learn that it has to be yours, which excludes both Gzula or Shula. Zok the Gemara, Binami Kaka Ein Nixelis, even if Rabbi Eliezer Kaka Ein Nixelis, and Rashi tells us anyway, Rabbi Eliezer happened to hold Karka Nixelis. But the Gemara wants to explain Rabbi Eliezer, even if you'd hold Karka Ein Nixelis, it would still be possible to be used because Sukkah She'ula. It's a Sukkah She'ula. Even if there's no status of Xela on land, there's for sure, then it would remain automatically borrowed, meaning it's the original owner's land, and it's possible to be used as a Sukkah. Rashi says, Ein Nixelis, therefore, even if you steal land, we still view it as if it's still in the hands of the original owner. There's actually machloekes in Bava Kama. Ikalamand their karka nixelis, the dorish rebuti and yuti. Ikalamand their karka nixelis, the dorish klali prati. Toshis tells us that we know Rabbi Eliezer holds that karka is nixelis, but nevertheless, the Gemara wanted to show that Rabbi Eliezer holds that the sukkah is possible no matter what you hold. The Rabbanan and the Rabbanan who say that this sukkah is kosher, the Amar Adam Yotzei Yidei Chevasoi V'Sukkah Shachavei, they hold you could be Yotzei the mitzvah of sukkah with your chaver sukkah, and they hold the karka in nixelis. They hold karka is not nixelis, and therefore for sukkah shuli, and therefore it's considered a sukkah shula, which is allowed. Let's see Rashi. Rabban Tamayu, the Amri, Yotze Adam B'Sukkah Shein Shaloi B'Shula. You could be Yotze the mitzvah of Sukkah sitting in someone else's Sukkah, which is how we pass. And the sphere led the Kaka in Nexelas. They also hold Kaka in Nexelas. The Rabban need the Amri B'Perka Gozel, the Kaka in Nexelas, who Pligi Aleh Der Beliezer Nami, Bad Nexelas Kaka. So what Rashi is pointing out that there's actually two machloikis in between the Rabban and Rabbi Eliezer. There's a machloikis of Kaka is Nexelas or not. The Rabban holds it's not Nexelas, and Rabbi Eliezer holds it is Nexelas. And then there's also a question of whether or not a Sukkah She'ula can be used. The Rabban holds it could be used, and Rabbi Eliezer holds it cannot be used. Hilchach Shulahi. Zok Rashi, B'hu Adinami, Ta'hava Leila Rab Nachman Lamemer. Rab Nachman could have explained this machloikis, Rabbi Eliezer L'tamei, the Amar Ba'goizel, Kaka Nexelas. Really, the way Rab Nachman could have explained Rabbi Eliezer of why you hold a Sukkah Gzula's puzzle is because he holds Kaka Nexelas, and therefore it's a standard case of Sukkah Gzula. The Sukkah Gzuli. And you could say to me, Aish Bailamina, Kisham Etalfin. Even if you hold that Yish works because Kaka is Nexelas, it could still be puzzle because it doesn't meet the word of Lacha, which says you cannot use a Kaka Gzula. You can't use a Sukkah Gzula. And there are abundant Tamayu, Dama Kaka Ein Nexelas, so She'ilahi. And they hold you could use a Baruch. So why didn't Rab Nachman choose to explain the machloikis between Reb Lezer and the Rabbanan by Sukkah that is totally in the machloikis of whether or not you'll Kaka Nexelas? Zok Rashi, because Ali Amar Hachi have a mashma the mighty Rabbi Eliezer b'shula. If that's how Rab Nachman would have explained the machloikis, then you might have mistakenly assumed that Rabbi Eliezer holds that a sukkah she'ula is allowed, and Rabbi Eliezer is only outlining this sukkah because it's sukkah gzula. But we know that's not true. And then Kaimalam by Yoshin, we just learned a couple of blot ago, that b'shula puzzle. The fact is, Rabbi Eliezer holds that not only is a stolen sukkah puzzle, a borrowed sukkah is also puzzle. So Rabbi Nachman wanted to make sure that we have clarity and understanding the full scope of Rabbi Eliezer. That's why he said, no matter what, if he holds Kaka Nexelas, which he happens to hold, we understand simply why he can't use the sukkah. But even if he would hold Kaka Nexelas, he would hold Kaka She'ula, Sukkah She'ula would also not be good. So I mean, I'm having a Rabbi Eliezer, Kaka Nexelas Krabona. Even if Rabbi Eliezer would have held that Kaka Nexelas, he still wouldn't agree to the Rabbanon that you can use the sukkah. This sukkah would be possible anyway, because even if it's not Zula, it's She'ula, and according to Rabbi Eliezer, sukkah She'ula does not work either. Okay, let's stop over here. So Mitchell, we're going to learn Shabbos an hour before Mincha in Shul. I don't know what time Mincha is yet. We'll learn an hour before Mincha in Shul, and we'll learn Matzah Shabbos at I think we learned 10:30 last week. So we'll learn Matzah Shabbos at 10:30, which is when we will chazer Daf Lamed Aleph. Or whoever was not able to make the Shul, we'll learn Daf Lamed Aleph Matzah Shabbos at 10:30, and we'll learn an hour before Mincha Daf Lamed Aleph as well.
Yosy Zalman.
Yes. Shkoyach, have a
Yosy
wonderful
Zalman.
Shabbos. Yes.
Do we have evidence from Rashi, the Rashi at the very top of the Omid V'Hamesachik B'Rishus Harabim Honami Gezel Harabim? Do we have evidence from this Rashi that everybody who has a sukkah does not mind if anybody sits in their sukkah? Because he says the word nami, meaning the fellow who makes a sukkah in Rishus Harabim, Rashi says, is a gazlan as well. But the word as well is, hold on a second, meaning the first sukkah that it said Tanu Rabbanon Sukkah Gezula, who says that that's Gezel Harabim? Rashi is saying it's Nami Gezel Harabim, meaning the first sukkah that's a privately owned sukkah is a Gezel Harabim because everybody is very happy for other people to sit in their sukkah. Is that
I'm not saying if you're sitting in a private sukkah, it's not Gezel Harabim, it's Gezel Aviyachid.
Right, so that's my question, but Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi says Honami Gezel Harabim, meaning the second case is also
Rashi didn't say Honami Gezel. Are you being medayik for the fact that Rashi says Honami Gezel Harabim and not just Honami Gezel?
No, I actually want to say, I want to be medayik from the word Nami. He should have said Ha Gezel Harabim. The fact that he uses the word Nami is including the first one. Follow me?
No.
Because
No.
Rashi has to say Gezel Harabim. Otherwise, otherwise, he's not explaining the second case.
Correct.
Rashi has to say Gezel Harabim. Rabim is very necessary for Rashi to say. But he could have just said Ha Gezel Harabim. The fact that he says Nami, it's also, meaning he's also saying that the first one is also Gezel Harabim.
But how is it Gezel Harabim?
I'm telling you, so the only way how it could be Gezel Harabim is if the average Yid allows people to sit in his sukkah, and that's why other people don't have a sukkah now, because he took it away.
What do you mean? The sukkah's still there. He's just sitting in that sukkah.
Oh, so then the question, so then when
Because it's on
we
his
say that
land.
a person,
He didn't remove the sukkah. He's just sitting in the sukkah that doesn't belong to him.
so then we're not talking about a guy who took away a sukkah.
No,
Who
I
ran
think
away.
Rashi says, says, Shetaka as Chaveira, Bechazaka, by Tim Sikasa, Benuya Bekarkoy Shal Nigzal. Reuben built a sukkah on Reuben's property, and Shimon went in, picked up Reuben, and threw Reuben out. I shouldn't say it that way. I shouldn't say it that way because Toysus has an example later, and it was the opposite. It was Shimon had a sukkah, and Reuben came and threw Shimon out. That's what Toysus describes it.
All right, Good Shabbos, we'll speak.
Good job. I wanted you to share that story about the fruit tree in your side yard, because we learned you know how to cut down a tree. You had a very interesting story with you and your neighbor.
Right. I had forgotten the fact that we had learned the Gemara yesterday, and so I did not share that story. I shared the Moti story or the Rabbi Hirschman story because it's still so fresh in my mind.
Wow, that was an awesome story. How the Rebbeinu Shalom delivered it.
You mean the tree?
No, I'm talking about the story that you said over with Moti Orbach, how the Rebbeinu Shalom delivered your answer.
Yeah,
But
so
the
my
tree is also an awesome story.
I even had another daher this morning. My daher is, and why did the B'Shefer allow me to understand what's going on now, meaning that my son was wrong? Why 3 years later is he allowing me to know that my son was wrong, and originally he didn't, right? Originally he did. Remember, I told you, I went to Reb Shlomo. Reb Shlomo gave me this funny answer, right? So I wasn't successful over there. I went to Rabbi Hirschman. Rabbi Hirschman didn't give me an answer at all, right? So I wasn't successful there. So why all of a sudden now am I allowed to know the answer? So I think the reason why I'm allowed to know the answer is because I'm supposed to see and understand how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu is protecting my sons. And now that I see how much he's protecting my sons, you yourself, meaning myself, have to act accordingly and be sensitive.
Very
to that.
interesting. Very interesting. So Hashem is trying to show you that just because he's your son, it doesn't mean you have free reign on him. You still have to treat him at least like a stranger.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, what? But I'm protecting his covenant, meaning this relationship between a father and a son is a delicate relationship. Rabbi Victor says that the most delicate relationship that a person has is with his mother-in-law. And he explains, he says, it's like you drop a china dish. When a china dish gets dropped, it's never the same. You can put it back together, but it'll never be the same. A friend, if you get into an argument with him, you don't have to be his friend anymore. It's finished. A wife, if you get into an argument with your wife, then life itself brings you together. You got to pick up the kids. You got to make supper. It comes back together on its own almost. But a mother-in-law, you get into a fight with your mother-in-law, you can't throw her away, and you're not forced to live with her every day most of the time. So these types of relationships, you with your married son or this or that, you can never get rid of them, but they're very, very important. They're very delicate in that sense.
So you have to be extra careful.
All right.
Let's go. Have a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos.
Okay, good Shabbos.